Hey people! How you doing? Welcome challengers to this webinar. Let me know if sound works, let me know if image works, let me know if you're having a good day in the chat. Today is all about GDPR, which is, for me, kind of a scary topic. I think it's super important. I'm trying to learn a lot about this, but I realize I need some help, and that's also why we're here today. I got an amazing person called Alexander Oos that will basically give us some knowledge on how to do it, and he's actually in the screen. Come and say hi, Alex. He's basically snapping himself right now.
Hi.
Yes. So we're gonna get started really soon. Okay, I see the sound and the image is okay. Really excited to do this, so I'm gonna just go ahead. Alex, please come in. I'm gonna share the screen for a minute, but just maybe talk a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you're doing.
A little bit?
A little bit. Just short.
Hi, I'm Alex. I work in a company that has a lot of CRM data. I'm responsible for everything with regards to personal data and the new GDPR regulation.
Cool.
So I know this.
So your world right now, I can imagine, is basically all around GDPR.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So much private data, so much meetings discussing laws, new regulations.
This awesome. For me as a marketer and as a business person and someone that's not particularly happy or doing paperwork, that sounds like a living hell, but you actually enjoy this shit, right?
It's 70% documentation. It's awesome.
Yes. and now we're getting really close to, middle of May.
Middle of May, the 25th, actually. End of May.
Yeah.
Then it's going live in all of Europe.
Yeah.
So, you ready?
I'm not ready. I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn from you guys and kind of understand more of how I can do this. And also, I blocked off several days in my calendar to basically be compliant and just implement all the different things. And I'm also now...
From the 20th of May? That's when you started?
Yeah, basically. But also, I'm experimenting and having fun with how to implement this in my marketing funnels so that it will be kind of a journey instead of just getting all the permissions at once. Right?
Yep.
So that's going to be fun as well. I am now going to share the screen here. So let me know if you can see the screen. That would be awesome. There we go. And boom. Good to go.
Yeah, when I made this presentation, there was about 100 days to go for GDPR. So the plan is to talk about like the absolute minimum requirements that we need to do in order to be compliant with the new regulations. That's the topic for today. Oh, you can just click to move to the next one?
Yeah.
Awesome.
You can't even click yourself if you want to. It's pretty amazing.
I click myself?
I can do it, yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to go through is we're going to talk about the documentation requirements, like the minimum we need to do in order to be compliant. We're going to talk quite a lot about right of processing, like why are we allowed to do what and what do we do with personal data. And since I made this when it was 100 days, we're going to look a little bit into what we need to do and a plan for how to do it so that we actually manage to get compliant ahead of the regulation, which is again the 25th of May.
D-Day.
D-Day. Before we start, we need to talk a little bit about what GDPR is, in case for some reason any marketers have been living under a stone and not been able to pick up that there's something new coming.
Yeah.
So we're going to look a little bit into like what areas are actually affected by GDPR, what do we need to do in order to be compliant with it, and when does it affect us, and just as important, like what is not GDPR, like what are we allowed to keep doing without thinking about it, or if we choose not to do any documentation, any of the things we need to do, are we still allowed to do marketing? Of course we are. Yep. We're going to mention that as well.
Cool.
Yeah. GDPR affects any use of personal data. And personal data is the standard ones that we usually talk about is things like your name, your email address, or one of your billion email addresses.
Yeah. Almost getting there.
It's your phone number. It's all the kind of things that are unique to you, like your license plate on your car, a photo of you, your birthday, the biometric data, which is actually kind of fun because I learned something new when I started working with this when it comes to biometric data. Because the shape of your body is actually not biometric data, because we're so alike, everyone, as humans.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, a little cozy thing here. But when it comes to the shape of your skull, fingerprints, iris, everything like that is also personal data. I don't think that's in use a lot today, but I think that if you start working towards GDPR compliance, you should look into what you're actually going to use in the future as well. Right. So if you think you're going to use facial recognition or something like that as part of your marketing, you should kind of ease into it already now and start thinking about how you're actually going to get consent or right of processing for that kind of data.
Right. And just to kind of clarify, you said pictures, right? So if I save pictures of my customers in a database, I need to get permission for that, eh?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
What you?
No, I haven't. I was just thinking of all the kind of training chains that kind of Alexia and all these that has a lot of data when you check in somewhere to take your picture, all that shit.
Absolutely. And I also think that this is something that you can use in a lot of, like, when VR and stuff like that starts showing up, then you might start creating avatars based on pictures that you take of clients. Either if you take a photo of someone, you make it an animated thing, and use that in VR example, then you actually need to have permission to store that photo.
Wow. Gaming would be so boring in the future.
Absolutely, but this is the thing. Like, we need to think ahead and not only look at GDPR and what we want to do today, but also look forward as we're doing the changes now.
Yeah.
Because the law is actually written to be to survive for a long, long time. So just get compliant right now.
Do it.
And in addition to the personal data, we also talk a lot about behavioral data, which is all the cool stuff that we use when we start storing what people actually buy, what stores they go into, how they move around, either offline or online.
Yep.
As soon as you start organizing that data and maybe using that to kind of make target groups or anything like that, then you actually need to have permission to store that data and permission to use that data.
Right. So, for example, retargeting everyone who bought from me the last 30 days on Facebook would be something I need permission for then.
If you use Facebook's Facebook Pixel, and that is the only thing you use to do it, then you're fine.
Okay.
But if you use the email address,
in
any way connected to the personal data, then you actually need permission to do that.
Okay.
In addition to that, there's a bunch of stuff when it comes to sensitive information, which is more like all the stuff that you should just stay away from, like political views, religion, and stuff like that. Don't market towards religion. It gets weird.
Okay, cool.
Translated, this means that for the super basics, this means that if you're collecting and using email lists as part of your marketing, not only if you actually send out emails, but if you use that in any other way, like in advertising, in programmatic, social media, anything like that, then you actually need to make sure that you're in line with the new GDPR regulations.
Right.
A lot of the existing laws, which is vastly different between the various countries that actually in the EU.
Yeah.
A lot of the laws here, like in Norway, it's pretty strict already what we can do. In a lot of countries, it's free for all. You can basically do whatever you want. There are actually certain countries where technically today you're allowed to buy email addresses.
Yeah.
Which I'll be honest, I've heard about people I know that have been doing this years ago. But there are countries where this is still actually possible to do within the law. So a lot of that will actually change, and we will have a unified law for the entire EU.
Which is basically a good thing, because it's a jungle out there if you're going to be compliant in every country that you're operating in.
Absolutely.
So, for example, me now, I'm starting to do business in Netherlands, Italy, Spain, Sweden, Finland, all the other countries in Norway. And to be honest, I haven't thought about even kind of the different rules that would apply. So it's good for me to have a unified, rules to apply from.
Yeah, which is why you asked me to do this in English.
Yes, yes, this is true. Yes.
So in addition to that, it's also important to know that GDPR applies to you if both of these actually kick in. Like you do business, you and your company is based in the EU or EFTA country, EUS, like we say in Norway.
Yeah.
Or you do business with citizens of the EU.
Right.
So that means
so
that
an American country doing business with the EU will then have to comply on this.
Yeah, and Brexit doesn't help the Brits.
It'll
still apply.
Okay, yeah.
It doesn't help if your company is registered in some offshore country, like you do small startup and you're registered for some reason in a small country outside of the EU. It doesn't help. You still have to comply with these laws as long as you do business with EU citizens.
Huh.
And you actually use personal data as part of your business.
Right.
And I think that I've yet to see the last couple of years, I've yet to meet a client that's done anything digital without thinking about personal data or making use of personal data.
This is true, yeah.
I think that modern marketing is more or less impossible to do without using personal data, purchase data, or in any way data-driven. If you're not data-driven today, then
you're screwed, basically.
I mean, you're not going to watch this if you're not data-driven, but
this is true.
I think it's impossible not to be data-driven today.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
You probably use personal data, hopefully thinking about it. If not, you should really think about what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
And it applies to you if you're doing anything with anything in the EU.
Yeah.
So you're not getting away with it on a small technicality, and it doesn't help moving your company to the Bahamas.
Right.
Sorry, dude.
That was my plan B.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the minimum requirements that we need to do in order to be compliant with the laws. And the minimum requirements for this is like, this is the absolutely bare minimum that you need to have in order to kind of keep doing as you're doing now. I think that if you only do this, you're probably going to get into, might come into a tricky situation every now and then if you don't really go into it. This is like the starting point, what you should be doing right now.
As a minimum.
As a minimum.
Okay.
I would strongly recommend doing more than this. I cannot press this.
But I will get in trouble from who?
The various countries in the EU have their own government organization that will do this. In Norway, they're called Data
Tilsynet.
Correct.
Cool.
And they have different names in different countries, but it's always some government organization that will be in charge of it.
Yeah.
And the various countries will have various, some countries will follow this really strict, some will not. But the thing is, if you do something with someone in Norway, even if you're not based in Norway, the Norwegian Datatilsynet will actually go after you, even if you're based in some other country.
Huh.
Which is important to know.
Yeah.
So even if your country might be a little bit not that strict on it,
like chill, yeah.
You should really pay attention because some other country, some client of yours might actually do something there.
Right. So go through this minimum requirements.
The minimum requirements is we need to have control of our right of processing. What gives us the right to process our customer data or the CRM data that we have? So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can actually do it, what are the valid reasons to actually do this, and how we kind of make an assumption on, and how we document that. We're going to talk about the privacy statements, which are the awesome, cool documents that everyone's read.
Such a nerd.
I love them.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a little bit about data processing agreements with your partners. Like if you're hiring in some agency or using someone else to help you out, you might actually need to have a DPA in order with that company.
Huh.
And we're going to talk about a little bit about the documentation requirements for internal processes and routines that you need to have in order.
Yeah.
That section is a little bit dependent on how large your organization is, like how large your business is. So it's kind of a scaling on how much you need to do. But there are minimum requirements there as well.
Okay.
So that's the everything you need to do before the 25th of May.
Wow. You guys watching here, please feel free to ask questions during this presentation. We'll have like 10-15 minutes on the end to answer them, and we'll try to answer as much as possible. So just feel free to drop in questions, and I'll try to go through them at the end.
Excellent. A couple of days ago, I was asked to kind of simplify how like the reasons and arguments why you're allowed to use personal data.
Yep.
And in simple terms, there are 4 reasons to use or store personal data, like legal reasons why you're allowed to do this. That is a legal requirement that says that you have to store this data. That is like when it comes to accounting, there might be laws and regulations. When it comes to guarantees of products, you might be forced to actually store data. Actually, you're required to do so by law.
Yeah.
To fulfill an agreement, like if I purchase something from your web shop and you ship that to me, then you, in order to actually ship that to me, you have to store my address. It kind of makes sense, and it's part of that agreement, the sales agreement between the 2 of us.
Yep.
Or if I provide you with consent, like I tell you that, yes, please send me emails, or please do something, calculate, please send me advertising, please adjust something, whatever you do with your data, as long as I give consent freely.
Yep.
Or if it's of vital interest, which is the...
that sounds like a lovely...
it's the elephant in the room. It's the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Because the thing with vital interest is, it's not your vital interest as a marketer.
Oh.
It's the...
Damn.
I was close though.
Yeah. I thought, find the loophole, but no.
No, that's not the loophole. Vital interest is of vital interest for the customer.
Okay.
I think that a good example of that could be if you have to have a callback on some product, then you might actually contact your customers and say, "Hi, I actually need you to send this product back."
Right.
That's vital interest. Vital interest is not 20% off flowers.
Damn.
Sorry.
How did you know?
So let's talk a little bit more about this.
Okay, cool.
You trying to jump ahead?
No, let's dive in.
This is the interesting part.
Yeah,
this is the interesting part too. So what you need to do is that all of the data we showed in a couple of slides ago, like the personal data, the behavioral data, all of that, you need to list down everything you actually store. Like if you store email addresses, names, and everything, you need to list everything you actually store, how you use it, and you need to figure out what is the reason why I'm doing this. What is the legal argument for me actually being able to do this?
I have to list it to the customer or internally or in a third-party site or...
As part of your internal documentation.
Okay.
You have to have this. You have to know everything you store, how you're using it, and what is the reason for using it. And spoiler alert, for most of marketing, it's going to be consent. Like people have to actually give you consent to do it. It's very, very hard to make a valid case, like a good argument for any of the other processing rights.
And you have some secret templates, right?
There are some secrets. There are always secrets.
There are some templates. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we can go. Yeah. Awesome.
And when you're listing all of that, it's kind of nice to do it because you need it for your privacy statement as well. The privacy statement is the not the big or terms and conditions and all of that stuff that you scroll past. This is actually the one that's linked in the terms and conditions. They all usually link to a privacy statement.
Right. So
it's buried even further down.
Right.
But
and you can still do that. You can bury it deep down still. Right?
Yeah, depending.
Great answer.
Great. Yeah. In certain cases, you can. In certain cases, I would recommend that you don't. But it really depends on what business you're in.
Okay.
And what you're actually doing.
Right. So online marketing, for example.
Online marketing, like the courses you're doing,
yeah.
I would kind of show people what you're doing with your personal data.
And, I'm all for, building trust and relationships. So I'm totally into this and I'm going to follow it. I'm just asking best practices.
Yeah. And,
you shouldn't trick your customers anyway. I mean, that's a bad way of doing business anyway. You're going to get screwed. You're going to get caught. So
absolutely. And privacy statement is basically you're being transparent about what you're doing with customers' data.
Right.
It's pure transparency thing. The good thing is that it actually, I can tell you what you need to be transparent about, and it forces you to be transparent, and it forces you to think about what you're doing with your customers' data. So what you need to do is that you need to list out what information are you collecting. And that's not only like if you collect my email address and you use some third-party internet magic to figure out more data about me, then you need to be open and honest about that.
Okay.
And you need to tell me how you're collecting that data and kind of what sources you're using to do that.
Right.
You need to say who you are.
Right.
Like, who are you? I mean, your brand is your name. It's no shock who you are.
Yeah.
But if you're doing hugecars.com, you need to tell
which company is behind
what
it.
company is behind hugecars.com.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hugecars.com.
I don't know. It was a crappy example.
It's probably an American site. Yeah.
No, the thing is, like, car companies is really awesome to use as an example because they actually have legitimate interests in certain weird cases. You can actually argue legitimate reasons why you could actually store data that you're not allowed to store. So it's a good example.
Okay.
In addition to what information, we talked about who you are. You need to say how you're collecting the data. You need to tell people why you're collecting the data. You need to tell them that I'm collecting your email address so I can send you an email once a week telling you how awesome I am and what you can actually, how I can help you, or this flash sale I'm doing on Sunday.
Yeah.
You need to be honest about what you're doing with that email. If you're doing it for ads and anything, you need to just tell people what you're going to do with it.
Okay.
You need to be honest about who you're sharing the data with. If you share data with, say, AdWords, you need to tell that I'm actually gonna, in this way, I'm gonna hash your data, I'm gonna upload it there, and I'm gonna use it to make targeted ads towards you. Or I'm gonna use your data to make targeted ads against people who are similar to you, like lookalike groups.
Right.
You need to be honest about that.
Okay. This is a good thing, but it's a lot for small businesses in particular.
It is.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important to kind of scale this in a manageable way, but this is like the minimum requirements here. Like, this is just something you have to do.
Yeah.
You also need to talk a little bit about how this will affect the person in relation to how it's being used. You need to talk a little bit about how I can object or complain. Like, if you're doing data processing in Norway, for example, you need to tell me that I'm actually able to object to this, and I'm allowed to kind of send a complaint to Datatilsynet.
Yeah.
Or any other agency that's in charge of this. You also need to tell me what rights I have as an individual. I shouldn't be forced to look for my rights anywhere else. So you need to tell me that I have the right to resist processing. I have the right to change any data you store about me. I have the right to view any data you store about me. And I have the right to delete.
For me, this is when I get stressed out, because in terms of all the marketing tools I use, there's not a my page or my settings kind of a thing as of now. Mm-hmm. Probably all these services have to, upgrade it in some kind of a way. But right now, it just seems super hard to be able to show my customers, which they are not only my customers, but actually people on my email list, what data I'm storing, and let them change it. So it's
so, like, what emails have they open? I don't know how deep you actually store data and how deep you actually go. Like, I work with CRM data every day, so I'm like, we store a lot.
I go, I think, equally as deep as you do, or almost as deep as you are doing. So it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, then we're gonna work it out.
Yes. And again, I'm really appreciating your helping us out on this.
Everyone should show up on the 26th of May when Thomas tells the story about how he did everything he needed to do for GDPR.
100%.
With examples and behind the scenes stuff.
Of course. Let's do that. Thank you.
No pressure, dude.
Thank you, dude.
I talked a little bit about data processing agreements. That is, if you hire in someone else to help you do marketing and they get access to personal data, you actually need to have a data processing agreement with them. It's like if you outsource your emails, like to a company like the company I work for, then you would actually have to have an agreement between the two of us.
Yeah.
That states what is, like, some of the things are similar to the privacy statement, like what's the purpose of this, how is things being handled. Of course, on a little bit more technical side. Yeah. I should also mention that the privacy statement that we talked about has to be written in a clear language, so lawyer talk is actually out.
Well, thank God.
So your lawyer cannot force you to pay thousands to actually get that written up.
Right.
You have to pay other people to help you if you can't do it yourself.
Right.
But the data processing agreement it's a little bit more of a lawyer thing.
Right.
It also has to include any subcontractor you use. It's like if you send emails and you have a company like SendGrid who does a lot of the emails that go out worldwide, especially marketing emails goes through companies like SendGrid or any number of other companies like that, then they have to be approved as a subcontractor or a vendor. So this kind of lists up everything you're doing. The main goal is to protect citizens' data. Like to protect your data whenever you give out your personal data, then you should be secure that this actually protects you, so your data doesn't go away or it's lost somewhere. It also requires data processors to follow quite strict security measures. This is again a little bit depending on the scale of the company, but there are very strict rules to what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do with data that they acquire on behalf of a client. And there's also for some reason, it's a very strict point that the length of the agreement must be included.
Right. So if we write an agreement for 1 year after, then renew it.
Yeah, and like an auto renewed every so long, and so this has to be also clearly stated, which is very strange to me at least.
Yeah.
So that's the data processing agreements. Internal documentation. It's kind of the big elephant in the room. Because it's very hard to say what is the minimum, what is the maximum, what is enough, what is not enough. It really depends a lot on the scale of the company. Like if you're a single person running a web shop, you do a little bit of marketing with some personal data, you store something to do agreements, and you might actually get away with having a kind of an Excel setup where Excel documents, you've documented everything there, and that might actually be enough. If you're running a larger scale company, then you might start looking into quite strict standards for how security and how documentation needs to be done. There are standards like the ISO standards. 27001 to 27006 are good places to start if you want to go super hardcore documentation wise. But it's a lot about scaling and scaling with your company. So you also need to keep doing this.
That's pretty individual how much you actually need of internal documentation.
I think it's impossible for me to stand here and say this is the minimum, this is the maximum. But the thing is that you need to document in some way what data you actually store, how you store it, what security measures you've done to make sure that it doesn't just drop off. Like if you write everything down, you should make sure that you would at least keep it in the log cabinet.
Yep.
And you need to be able to have some sort of internal documentation. Like if I ask you to hand over all the personal data you stored on me, which is one of my rights within GDPR, then you need to have a routine that's documented for how you handle that, making sure that you give me everything that you stored on me.
Right.
Because you have an overview of where you actually stored all the data and the thousands of different places that you stored it.
Right. Okay.
But I think that this is a very hard point to kind of talk about because it really scales with the organization that you're in.
Right.
Yeah. It's always good to do examples.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we're going to go through 3 very, very fast, quick examples on what we need to do as a bare minimum in order to keep doing what we're doing today. Because the goal of everything when it comes to getting compliant with GDPR is at minimum being able to continue doing what we're doing today within the new laws.
Yeah.
Let's
dive into it.
Email marketing, one of your favorites.
Yes.
One of my favorites as well. It's very, very efficient. And there's nothing saying that we can't keep doing it, but we need to have a couple of things in place in order to keep doing it.
And the big question is then, of course, my existing email list that I don't have documentation on how they approve to get on the list, I need to now get permission.
Spoiler alert, everyone's going to get an email from Thomas where he doesn't say anything about selling anything. He's only going to ask you if you want to keep getting his emails.
Please click this link. Yeah.
And then you click approve, that you would love to see more of his emails and that you give freely consent to that.
Yes. And of course, I'll give you a gift for that. That's how marketers.
Yeah, you're allowed to do a little bit of gift, but that's actually a tricky thing because the gift you give cannot be so big that I feel forced to do it.
And that is based on the local.
That's based on
agency.
If you're trying to be smart, and outsmart your customers, you're probably not that smart.
Of course, yeah.
This is why I wanted to use a car company or a car thing as an example.
Yeah.
This is actually a very good example. If you sell cars and you give me 50% off if I get consent.
50?
Yeah, or 20, even 20% off.
Yeah.
I will feel forced to give you that consent because the knockoff price is so big that it will affect
free test drive.
Fine.
Okay. So
they give that
PDF
away,
guide.
They give that away for free anyway. But like if I get a 20% off a car,
yeah.
I will feel forced to do it.
Right.
But if you sell ice cream, you're allowed to give me an entire ice cream, like 100% off.
Why?
If it gets consent because
it's small.
It's smaller, lesser monetary value.
Yeah.
So it's always.
But again, those rules will be determined by the local agents, like government agents handling it.
It's actually people are going to go wrong. People are going to get sued.
Yeah.
It's going to be decided by the courts.
The courts.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are no binding legal things when it comes to this as of yet.
So it's a judge.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. As I'm saying, like, if you're trying to outsmart your customers and you think you're outsmarted someone,
you're probably not outsmart yourself.
You're probably not that smart.
Okay. So what's the minimum requirements?
Minimum requirements for emails is you have to be allowed to store the email address. You have to have consent for that. You have to have since you're storing things, you need to have a privacy statement in order, telling what you're actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to have consent to send me an email. Because storing my personal data and sending me an email is two different things that you're doing with my personal data. And every single thing you're doing with my personal data, you need to have a valid right of processing, which in most cases for marketing will be consent. There are extremely rare cases where you can get away with other things.
And if I want to upload it to custom audiences on Facebook, I have to get permission for that specifically as well.
Yes, that's a new consent.
Great.
It's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. Okay, next one.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Facebook ads. You're uploading something. Consent. You still need consent to store my data. Maybe you're using purchase data as well, like you only want to upload whoever's bought or clicked some link or something like that.
Yeah.
Then you actually need to have permission to use that data in that way. So if you want to use the fact that I bought something from you, that's purchase data. That's not my personal data. That's like purchase data or data I collect from that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you should actually get a consent for that as well. So that will be even trickier.
That's behavioral data, right?
Yes. But that being said, like still like buying target groups or buying data on Facebook
mm-hmm.
is something that you're still free to do. If you're using Facebook's own tools, as long as you're not uploading anything, you can keep going without consent because you're not using personal data.
Right.
There's actually a new regulation that's on like being talked about now. That's called e-privacy. That will affect a lot of like cookies, Facebook pixels, and stuff like that. But that's a lot of people have been talking about that being a law. It's not a law yet. It's not part of the law. And when that comes, I'll come back and talk about it. That'll be fun.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
40 minutes about cookies.
Yeah. Like the ones you eat, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll do a lot of cookie puns on that one.
Pumpkin. I had pumpkin cookies today. Pumpkin spice cookies today.
Wow, you're so basic.
It was good. Okay, Google Ads.
Google Ads, same thing. You need to have consent if you're using purchase data, if you're using location-based data. Like if you want to target anyone who lives in an area or that is moving around in a certain area, and Google has that information, that's fine. But if you're uploading people I know that passes my store every day,
mm-hmm.
because you've gotten that from some, like say, beacon, and then they went in and bought something, and you store the beacon data, and you're doing a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're so creative and cool when it comes to using data, which is awesome.
Yeah.
You just need to be able to provide documentation that you have consent to do that and use that data.
Right. And a privacy.
Yes.
Document.
And a privacy statement. Privacy statement is like your minimum.
Okay.
That's always going to be required.
Cool. Okay, so what do we do basically?
Yeah. There's 3 things you need to do. like we started in the introduction.
Yeah.
You need to get an overview. Like that's what you should do. If you're not doing it right now, when we go off the air, then you should tomorrow or later today, you should sit down and start getting an overview. What data have I stored? Where have I stored it? And why am I storing it? What am I using it for?
We need to do this next week, my friend.
It's gonna be fun. It's like get the overview, and at the same time get an overview of what do I want to use the data for. Like we talked about, like if you want to do weird stuff with VR in the future, like get that down right now. Start planning ahead.
Yeah.
Because you can do so much communication trying to get consent right now and trying to organize everything you're doing. So you might as well just look forward straight away.
Right.
And then you start working on the documentation, like document everything you need. That is starting on your privacy statement, getting that in shipshape in order, making sure that you have the internal documentation that you need, and that's adjusted to the needs you have. And you need to kind of make sure that you do whatever security measures you need to do. And then you're going to, at some point, you're going to see that you need to adapt some of the things you're doing today. Like you need to change. Either you need to change what services you use, how they exchange data between each other. You might need to cut something. You might need to create a CRM master database. If you don't have that, you need to create that.
Yeah.
And then you have to do all these changes. And I would do those changes as at the same time as I'm out there, like sending the email we talked about, trying to get consent, making sure that you're kind of clearing up your database. Mm-hmm. And at some point, you actually need to have to delete data you're not allowed to store anymore.
Right. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, you're gonna lose some subscribers, dude.
Yeah, I'm aware, and that's fine. It's better to just follow the rules.
Follow the rules.
Yeah,
it's easier that way.
Yeah.
And then the 25th of May, GDPR arrives around the corner.
Yeah.
This is a cool thing. When you're compliant and your competitors are not, then you start taking competitive advantage of the fact that you have everything in order.
Right.
Like if your competitors are not allowed to use customer data on Facebook ads, but you're going to win.
Yeah.
So this is basically an arms race.
Yeah. So start now. Start today.
Yeah.
Or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, this is a lot. Okay, so soon we're going to go to questions. So start asking questions now. I asked very nicely Alex to be able to maybe help some of you guys as well. And Alex usually charges $5,000 to do a workshop, but I really pushed hard. So we have 20 spots open if you're interested in booking a one-to-one call with Alex. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're going to go through in that call and kind of how that works?
Yeah. Like we talked about when you pushed our friendship to the limit.
Yeah.
We talked about actually before the call. You sent me a little bit of information about whatever company or what you're doing today. I'll have a look through how your basic setup is right now, and then we'll talk about like what do we need to do, and we'll sit down and we'll make a plan for what you need to do in order to get compliant.
Yeah.
We'll look at the documentations you need. We'll look at the if there's any templates. Or and everything you need to do so that you're in shipshape before May.
Right. And so it's $349, so it's super cheap, super affordable. Any business who are kind of afraid or confused around this should definitely grab this opportunity. I don't think you can get this any cheaper anywhere else. It's only 20 spots. So if you click the link that should be in the chat or go to thomasmoen.com/GDPR, if the site is still up, is still a spot available. The site is down. Unfortunately, we're sold out. So if you want our help, let us know. Just go there and book a call.
Yep.
And Alex will get on the call with you as fast as possible and basically hold your hand and make sure that you're ready for this. Look at all the documentation, give you some homework on what you need to do, and kind of just help you through this process. And I think for a lot of businesses, this is scary, this is confusing, this is a lot. There's also big fines for this, right?
There are potentially game-changing or game-ending fines. I think it's 20 million euros, which is like the maximum they're allowed to give.
Yeah.
Or 4% of your overview.
Right.
So there's going to be some fines there. I don't think they're going to be that high in the beginning. Like they're not going to bankrupt you and your like 6 generations past. You're still going to keep paying for this, but they will be potentially ending your company if you don't do this over time.
Right.
So you need to be compliant, and it's easier to do it now. And if you get a review and you've done nothing, then you're, what is the American saying? Up shit's creek without a paddle.
You're fucked, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. So then $349 is a small investment to make sure that you don't get screwed.
Absolutely.
Basically. It's
cool.
a steal. Okay, it's a steal. Great. So, people are already signing up. That's great.
Wow.
Pia was first one out, so congratulations. That means just a few more spots left. I'm gonna I'm gonna ask you some questions now. So feel free to ask questions in the chat. We're got a few more minutes only, so we're not gonna be able to answer all the questions you might have, but I'm gonna try to just find some questions for us. And again, only 20 spots for getting help by Alex for a bargain. So let us know or sign up if you're interested in that. Okay, finding first question.
Just looking over your shoulder at the questions.
Yeah. Does it also apply to the storage of personal data about the people who work in your company?
Yes. We've been talking about the marketing side of GDPR now, but GDPR actually also affects how you store data about your colleagues and people working for you. There are a couple of other things that actually affect that dynamic. But as a general rule, GDPR still applies. It applies for that. It applies for like vendors, your customers. Like even if you have companies as customers, it applies to the data you store about the key account manager and stuff like that as well. The big change is that it's a little bit easier to have consent or a right of processing, because for your employees, you will automatically have a right of processing due to both legal and an agreement, because there are certain data you're legally required to store about your employees.
Yeah.
And the rest, like your bank account and stuff like that, is stuff that you need in order to fulfill the agreement of me working for you.
Right.
So you can actually pay me money. So it's more that side of it is easier, but you still need to be a GDPR compliant on that side of it.
Okay.
So I would say that's if you've done nothing now, I would fix the marketing side first, because that's going to be more obvious, and I would sort that out after I'm done with the marketing side.
Yeah, and you might be able to reuse some of the things you're creating for employees, yeah? Okay.
Like you don't need a privacy statement for your employees.
Okay. What if I already have existing database of email addresses and I would like to use it after GDPR start to be a real thing? What should I do?
I would go through and I would look at the right of processing. Like, do I have consent? How have I gotten all this data? How am I storing it? And what agreement do I have with the people that I've stored data about? You might need to send out an email informing them that, hi, I've saved your data, like Thomas is going to do. Like, hi, I've stored data about you. I'm using it for this and this. These are my terms and conditions. Like, these are the consents that I have stored on you. Could you please confirm? If you already have all of that in order, I would update the terms and the privacy statement. I would send out an email saying that, hi, my terms or my privacy statement has been updated, FYI.
Yeah.
It all depends on what is your current.
So basically, if you have nothing.
If you have nothing, you need to write everything up, send it out, and I would actually say that personally, I would say that you need to get consent, and everyone you don't get consent from, you have to delete.
Right. And if you book one of these calls, you have some templates to work from that you can kind of help them out with, or?
There are some templates and some guidelines that I can absolutely help with.
Great. So even that is just would be much appreciated. Okay. What about tags used in email marketing system to describe a certain category or behavior? In other words, following a sequence of mail based on triggers such as downloading a resource or buying a product online, etc.? Do we need to get consent for using specific tags?
If you're talking about like marketing automation, which is how I kind of interpret that question, you're free to use marketing automation and like that kind of behavioral data. I would just be honest about how I'm doing it. Like if you do this on my emails, I'm going to use triggers to make this and this happen. Just be honest about what you're doing, and absolutely.
And that's in the agreement, right?
Yeah, part of the privacy statement. I would, at the minimum, if you don't have some other like membership terms or purchase terms or anything like that, I would have it in the privacy statement.
Privacy. If I send an email for my customers to confirm that I can keep on sending emails to them, if they don't open the email, can I continue to send until they open the email?
No, then you're being smart.
So you can do it before the 25th of May, right?
I would send this in a couple of batches. I would start by just asking, hi, is it okay if I keep sending you stuff? And I was like, hey, you didn't reply to my last email. And then comes the third one, hey, 20% off something.
Yes. Have a cookie.
Have a cookie. Have a pumpkin cookie because I'm basic.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we're going to have a few more questions. I see that the spots are filling up pretty fast. So jump on it if you think that you'll need help to handle this, and ask more questions if you have one. Is it okay to store personal data on company server, or is there any more regulation on security in terms of storage?
There are actually, like GDPR, the law itself doesn't say this, but there are a couple of statements that has been interpreted, and there are like these working groups that interpret the law, kind of figuring out how will this actually be. So one of these working groups is the Article 34. I might be wrong on the number there.
Just trying to show off.
Trying to show off. Pretty sure that's the right one.
Yeah.
Which, among other companies that's in that working group, is Cisco. So they've done a lot about the requirements from a technical point of view.
Right.
What is known in the law is that you have to store data within the EU or from a company that is pre-approved by the EU Commission.
Right.
There are certain companies like Google has been, to the best of my knowledge, approved through what is called the Privacy Shield.
Yeah.
But in general, I would make sure that you store all data in the EU.
Yeah.
Most cloud services these days actually have a setting where you can say that I want data stored within the EU, like Azure and services like that. Cool. You can actually ask them to store data within the EU, even if you're using that. That's Amazon cool. Web Service, AWS, does the same thing.
Huh. Hi, Wilco, by the way, I see you. Okay, one more question. I'm going to get two.
You're going to go two?
I'm going to give you two questions. So what about collecting payments for products? I believe you talked about that, but please just repeat.
Yeah. Payment for products would be part of an agreement for a purchase. So that you would actually don't need consent to collect that or to store that. And when it comes to various countries have various laws on how long you need to store purchase data for accounting purposes. So the accounting part and storing it for accounting is fine. What's important is that GDPR kind of imagine a hierarchy of laws. We have like the Constitution is always the strongest one, or then you have complicated.
Yeah.
Further down, you have the GDPR actually is quite low on the hierarchy. So whenever GDPR comes in conflict with another law, it's usually GDPR that loses. For example, when it comes to accounting laws will be stronger than GDPR. So if GDPR says no, but the accounting law says you're forced to, then you're still forced to. So that's important to know. There's a little bit of variation between the countries there, but fortunately most EU countries have pretty much the same laws there.
Right. How in-depth would the call be? Our business is quite complex when it comes to privacy data, got data of our customers, and our customers in turn of their audience as well. So how deep are you going to go? Is it for kind of a complex business, this will still be something you're able to help with?
Absolutely. I think that we'll set aside a lot of time that we've agreed upon. I think that based on what you're sending me in before the call. If it just seems too complex, or I think that this will be way too much for this, I think we'll just do a dialogue there and then. I think that's more fair.
Right.
But I think that a lot of companies will actually have a lot of good out of that call.
Right.
If nothing else, that one-on-one call, if you're that complex, might actually lead to you, at least me pointing out what areas are important to look into.
Right. Great. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Alexander, for helping out. It's big and
it's fun.
It's a big freaking monster, and I hate it. But
it's fun.
but it's something we all need to pay attention to and work towards. I still see it's a few more spots available if you want to have a one-to-one call with Alex, where he basically helps you to get GDPR compliant. Get everything in order so that your company will not be shut down by the government 25th of May. Yeah. So thank you so much. Have a great day, guys. I'm going to just stop sharing my screen just to make sure everything's cool.
Everything's always cool, isn't it?
Everything is always cool. There we go. We are here.
That's creepy.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the chat if this was valuable, if you want me to do more things like this, get more experts in to be able to help you. And have an amazing day.
Bye.
Bye.